Hello, everybody. Welcome to ESPN FC live on YouTube. ESPN FC. Mark Ogden is in the house. Oggy, Copenhagen, are we at?
Copenhagen. That's why it's so dark outside. It's that's Northern Europe in the winter for you.
I was gonna say it wasn't the dark evenings of Manchester. You're in Copenhagen, of course, as Manchester United takes a visit to Copenhagen in the Champions League. We'll be talking about that later. Janusz Mihalik, always a pleasure. How are you, sir?
I am doing well. Dark clouds over Manchester United, though, that's for sure. Huh, Mark?
He's keeping quiet because he's agreeing with you, Janusz Mihalik. Dark clouds indeed, but they did get a good win last weekend. We'll be talking about that, everybody. Don't worry about it. Luis Miguel Echegaray in the house. Janusz Mihalik, Mark Ogden. We'll be talking Champions League, of course, Chelsea, Manchester City this weekend. Maybe some other topics regarding transfer news if we get there. But let's get going. Let's start away with Tuesday's action in the Champions League. And Tom Collins, our beautiful producer, show me that graphic of the group of death, please. My goodness, the group of death indeed. Dortmund with a precious victory over Newcastle. They are leading the group, 7 points. PSG lose to AC Milan. They're second with 6 points. AC Milan, as I mentioned, 5, and Newcastle at 4. But it's all to play for. Janusz Mihalik, straight away. Give me your reaction from this group, the group of death indeed. Who gets out of it?
I don't know. I think it's group of life. Never mind death. I mean, everybody's in it. It's not a group of death. I mean, let's be honest here. I mean, big names, but pretty average teams. And that's why I think we're in the situation that we're in. You can, I suppose, excuse Newcastle because it's new to them. And what they've done over the last couple of years is incredible. And I think ahead of it, I mean, I don't know. I think we could assume that in the company of such esteemed teams, it would be difficult, and yet it's all going to come down to the last game. These teams aren't doing well away from home for the most part. At home, there have been some great games. Speaking of Newcastle, the game against PSG just last week, we were talking about PSG as if they were going to win everything. The great performance at home, and here we are going away to Milan, and I don't want to say second best the whole game because they weren't in the second half. They came back because Milan looked spent. But when I thought about it, ironically, for some of these teams, maybe going to the Europa League would be the best thing because at least you have a chance of winning it, right? I mean, none of these teams are going to win the Champions League, even though they're big names. And yet you could say that they could all probably win Europa League and guarantee themselves Champions League. So for some of them, that would be more important than others because they can qualify through their leagues. But, there's a couple of teams there that there are question marks if they're going to see themselves in the Champions League. Newcastle is one of them, right? I mean, maybe they're better off playing in Europa League and finishing third in this.
Notably, it's a very good point, especially after returning to the Champions League after a few years. Maybe just getting a trophy is the number one priority. Oggy, Tom Collins, show me that graphic of the next upcoming fixtures. I want to see if Oggy can give me a prediction. AC Milan against Borussia Dortmund on November 28th. PSG against Newcastle. Maybe it's redemption time in Paris for Mbappe and co. And then December 13th, it ends with Dortmund, PSG, Newcastle, AC Milan. What are you thinking here, Oggy? Who is getting out? Any intricacies regarding this group?
Yeah, I mean, PSG Newcastle is the big game for me because I think if Newcastle lose that, then that's them done. They'll then have a final game decider, I guess, against Milan for Europa League. But Milan have put themselves right back in it by they've got Dortmund next, and by beating PSG, you think that Milan got to the semi-finals last season. I didn't see them doing it again this year, but look where they are. So it's a really, really close group, and I do think that Newcastle will regret the fact that they lost at home to Dortmund last week. That was the big one for me because after beating PSG at St James's Park, I think a lot of people were getting carried away. I think some people were even writing that they could go all the way this year, which was never going to happen. But I think Newcastle, as Jan said, they're back in Europe for the first time in a long time. And although they've enjoyed the Champions League ride, if they end up in the Europa League, and that's not by no means guaranteed, because like I said, that final group game against Milan at St James's Park, that could be the game that decides Europa League. But Newcastle in Europa League, you would expect them to go deep into the competition. And, for a club that's not been in Europe for a long time, the fans love being in Europe. They take that. So obviously they want to stay in the Champions League, but I do think that Newcastle have got an uphill battle there because I just think they'll lose at PSG. PSG is strong at home and, flaky away. But I think Newcastle, they're going to struggle to get out of this group.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Janusz, very quickly, AC Milan with a great victory, obviously, against PSG. Pulisic played very well, but towards the end of that game came off. Pioli was hoping for a cramp, but it was in the same place where he injured in his thigh. Just from a USMNT perspective, very quickly, because the USMNT play Trinidad and Tobago next week in a two-legged affair. And actually, that determines a lot of their Copa America placement next summer, because CONMEBOL did not guarantee them a place in that tournament. They have to do well in the Nations League. How important is Pulisic? And there's other injuries as well, right? Timothy Weah, Juventus, exactly. How big do you see this one?
Well, I mean, it's big in the sense that Greg Berhalter, and it's a second go-around with this team, would like to have all players available and start building towards the World Cup. Copa America is important. That's the next step. It's a step that, who knows, may decide the fate of Greg Berhalter as well. So that's super important to have the best players in that dressing room. Timmy Weah's out, of course, as well. Tyler Adams now, who knows for how long. And with Pulisic, it's just that it continues to happen over and over and over again, just as you moved. Had a great start to the season, and now we'll see what that means, because obviously international window is looming large. It's next week as well. In terms of playing in Trinidad and Tobago, I think we're deep enough. And I'm going to be careful here, because I said that once before against Trinidad and Tobago, and I think we all remember what happened. We didn't go to the World Cup because of them. And our friend Shaka Hislop, I don't really want to have that going against for the second time around. But I think, honestly, the way this U.S. team is, we have a lot of depth. It's also an opportunity, as always, but you don't want to take anything for granted. So I think we're deep enough to deal with Trinidad and Tobago in the meantime. But I just think that, the more we talk about Claudio Reyna in and out, Christian Pulisic in and out, and part of me, I don't really care what they do at the club level, because they're one of the players that, when they come back to the national team, they always do well. And that worries me more than anything. It's funny how, when managers around the world pick their players for the team, everybody says, well, he's playing well for his club. When I cheer for my country, I don't care what they do at the club level. All I care is about that they play well for the country, because that's not always the case.
Of course, and that they're healthy, which is the hope for Pulisic to be healthy to return to the squad. Before we move on to other topics, Augie, very quickly, let's show some love for the old man that is Pepe. What happened yesterday, Augie? What did he do?
Well, he became the oldest ever Champions League goal scorer at the age of 40. So he's beaten Francesco Totti. He's taken him out of the record box, who was 38. So Pepe, for me, now, we all talk about Erling Haaland, Leo Messi. We talk about Kylian Mbappe, all these great strikers, or Jude Bellingham, the goal scorers. We tend to overlook the defenders. And Pepe, for me, has been just an absolutely iconic defender for maybe 20 years now. 3 Champions Leagues. He was part of that fantastic defensive partnership with Sergio Ramos. And he's just an example of how to defend. Now, there are a lot of dark arts in there as well. He has his moments. He's certainly got a few disciplinary issues over the years. But the fact that he's still playing, he's playing the Champions League at 40. He's playing for Porto. He's playing for Portugal still. He hasn't taken the money on offer in Saudi Arabia. He wants to stick around in Europe. So I just think we have to pay tribute to these players sometimes. To play in the Champions League at 40 is an amazing achievement. To play as a centre-half against those amazing, quick centre-forwards and strikers, again. So hat off to Pepe, because if any young defenders out there watching Pepe, he's the masterclass of defending, the old-school defender that doesn't let things pass, but also scores goals as well.
Absolutely. Tremendous stuff. Well done to Pepe. Let's move on now to Manchester United as they face Copenhagen. Of course, Augie, Mark Ogden is there for that game. Let's return to you, Augie, and then Janusz, I'd love your opinions on this. But let's begin from the past, from last weekend, with that very crucial, important victory, for at the very least, from a momentum and confidence perspective, against Fulham, where Bruno Fernandes, of course, scored that goal. Is that the turnaround, Mark Ogden, or is there a lot more to do?
Listen, United have turned the corner a few times this season and walked into a brick wall. So let's just kind of let's have a bit of context here. And I think the issue for me is that obviously that has taken the sting out of this game, because if they'd lost at Fulham or failed to win, they would have been going into this game with real crisis talk. But ultimately, it's only one win. And if United don't win against Copenhagen tonight, then they're not out of this group. But it adds to their really poor start to the season. Now, let's be honest, Man United should be beating FC Copenhagen. No matter what strength of team they are, they should be beating Copenhagen, because they are the weakest team in the group, and it's a team that, if you're in this group, you would think, oh, well, let's take the Copenhagen 6 points and deal with the other teams. They haven't done that. They've got 3 points at home. They have to get 3 points tonight. because next time up is a trip to Galatasaray, Istanbul, which is likely to be basically the decider. United may have to win there to go through. And I think the one thing that worries me about this team, the Copenhagen manager was saying yesterday that the atmosphere at the Parken Stadium tonight will be 100 times greater than Old Trafford. Times that by another 10 for Istanbul and Galatasaray, it's 1,000 times more intense than Old Trafford.
Ooh.
So, does this squad have the character and the determination and the ability to play in a hostile atmosphere? I'm not sure it does. So they really need to win in Copenhagen tonight. It won't be hostile in Copenhagen. It'll be noisy. It won't be hostile. Galatasaray, I've been there. It's very hostile. And if you're a player that hasn't quite got that strength of character, they'll get steamrolled. So they have to win against Copenhagen tonight to keep their hopes alive.
What do you reckon, Janusz? What's happening tonight?
Well, look, I mean, if there's a time to turn the corner, it's now, isn't it? I mean, it's Copenhagen. The atmosphere is going to be, as we know, tremendous. It's not going to be easy given on what we saw in the first leg and just recently. But this is a great time to turn it around. I mean, United are capable of being Copenhagen, even if it's away. And if they do, then you look at Luton at home and Everton away, games that they're capable of winning, right? I mean, you look at their position, as bad as we think they've been, and they haven't been good to watch at all. They're in 8th place, 6 points behind, I think, both Arsenal and Liverpool. 3rd place here. I think Bayern will take care of Galatasaray. If they win today, that puts them in a good spot, and then they can, I don't know if they're going to have to win or not, but there may be a possibility where they can, get a draw. So, I mean, it seems a lot worse than it actually is. And as I've always said, I'm not going to put Manchester United away just yet. It's easy to do it. It's easy to jump on that bandwagon. For me, I look at them, and there's some other clubs of that ilk, but I look at Manchester United as a club that is too big to fail. It just really is. And I'm not saying that this is going to turn around immediately. There's some work they need to do now in the upcoming window. But I do think there's a possibility of turning that corner where at least you put away that crazy noise that's around the club on and off the pitch.
And when you look
That
at
is
them,
jumping there,
by the way, yeah, go ahead, though.
I mean, as Janusz said, United are too big to fail. I take his point. They are one of the biggest clubs in the world, but I think that approach is why they're in the situation they're in. There's too many people at the club who felt that in the past. Senior people that have felt, we're Man United, we're too big to fail, we'll spend a bit of money, we'll buy this player, we'll buy that player, we'll hire this manager, and it's not worked. So in many ways, their size and their wealth in terms of commercial revenue has held them back because they've just relied on that. They've become complacent and believe that we're Man United, we'll be fine. It's not fine because the big advantage of the Ferguson era 20 years ago, they had the best manager, the biggest stadium, and they had the biggest commercial revenue. Now, in the time since, all the clubs in the Barca's, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich have caught up. Manchester City, Tottenham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea have also caught up in the Premier League. So United, they've all got now great stadiums that bring in much more money. They've got better managers. They've had commercial growth. So all the advantages that United had when they were too big to fail have gone. And now they are still a big club. But when they do fail, they feel it more because in the past, when United had a bad season in the early 2000s, there was only Chelsea and Arsenal that were competing. Now there's 4 or 5 teams that are competing. So a bad season at United now means they finish 6th or 7th. So they aren't too big to fail. They should be, but they're not. And I think the sooner the people at the club realise that is when they'll start coming back.
I simply meant that there is that money, so you can have a couple of tries because other clubs that don't have those means, they maybe get a 1 goal or maybe 2, where United are going to continue to get that goal, as you said, if they do the right things in the near future.
Well, the right thing is to try and get out of this group. And right now, obviously, they want to get this win against Copenhagen because with Galatasaray playing Bayern Munich still twice, there's still a hope. Let's stay with Manchester United. Mark Ogden, you wrote a piece about our favorite, well, not sure if it's our favorite, but a striker done so nonetheless. Rasmus Højlund, why his lack of goals are not necessarily his problem. Where are you going with this one?
Yeah, I just think he's been let down with the lack of service that he's had. I mean, first of all, he arrived at the club with an injury, so he didn't start in terms of a full pre-season behind him. But I think one thing I've seen with Højlund is he's a player that gives everything. His head hasn't gone down, and you can see that he's desperate to score that goal. But he's not getting the service. He's got 2 inverted wingers that are playing with him right now who are both in terrible form. Anthony's out of form, no assists all season. Marcus Rashford, 1 goal, 1 assist all season. So the players that are most likely to feed him the ball are not giving him the ball. He's making good runs, he's getting behind defenders, but he's not getting chances. It's now 160 minutes since he had a chance. in the Premier League. So that tells you the problem, that you've got this kid who's got a lot of potential. He's not getting the ball. Now, Bruno Fernandes might be his best hope in terms of getting the ball to him, but obviously Fernandes is playing in a team that is struggling right now. So I feel for Højlund. When he scored that goal against Galatasaray maybe a month or two ago, Paul Scholes said he reminded me of Ruud van Nistelrooy, the way he got the ball, turned in the centre circle, ran through the defence and scored. He does that about him that, I mean, it's a big billing to compare to Ruud van Nistelrooy, but still, he needs better service. So I think that the longer it goes on, 8 games that go in the Premier League, it's beginning to eat away at him a little bit, and that people are mentioning it. It's not Diego Forlan level yet. It's not 9 months, but he needs a goal and he needs better service.
He's 20. He's 20, Janusz Michalek. Surely we got to wait a little bit.
I feel for him because they put him in such a bad spot, right? And not to mention that he's inexperienced and untested. I mean, small sample. I mean, well, I just sometimes wonder what were they thinking that he's going to do? I mean, he's 20 years old. In his senior career, he scored 9 goals for Sturm Graz and 9 goals for Atalanta. With Denmark, obviously he's got a pretty decent record there, so fair play. But I don't know what was expected of him. And this time of turmoil, where there's been so many coaches, so many players have left. Not to mention that kind of, I'm not saying that he's under pressure of Cristiano Ronaldo leaving, but I mean, United have been used to having some of the greatest goal scorers in Europe, if not in the world. So I think from the beginning that was going to be difficult. I think he's coping fairly well with that. You see his work ethic. You see how much he wants it in terms of, every time he's taken off. He's been good. But I still think that, at the best of times at Manchester United, Højlund should have been learning under, I don't know, Harry Kane or somebody like that, kind of getting experience and coming in maybe. But a lot of pressure, and I don't know where the expectations came in just because the numbers don't back that up. There are a lot of young players out there that are doing well and scoring goals as well. People are comparing him to Erling Haaland. He's young, but he was doing it in the Champions League and in the Bundesliga for Borussia Dortmund. So that is basically the difference.
Yeah, and obviously to Mark Ogden's point, the supply has not been there. Well, to that point, actually, and let me just return to Janusz and Ogi, you jump in on this. The supply is not there. Anthony, a top 10 transfer record in the Premier League, not doing anything. Obviously, inconsistency on both wings. The Garnacho sometimes is on, sometimes he's off. Pelistri comes on every 20 minutes, etc. Marcus Rashford is not having the season that he had. What do they need to do in January? What do you expect, at least? Do they need to really be aggressive in January, specifically in those positions, in order for them to get more productivity out of their strikers? What do you think?
I'm going to go for, because I truly believe in that. But Mark maybe can tell us what we're hearing there. He's close to the club, but I really think they have to make a decision quietly about Ten Hag. They have to make a decision if he's good enough. I mean, look, I'm not here to say that he's got to go. I think we were praising him a last season for obvious reasons, and rightfully so. But I mean, this has been the worst run since Sir Alex has left, I think. If you look at all competitions for Manchester United right now, and obviously you're not going to change the whole team, but the philosophy is that I'm just waiting for him to show me that he's capable to manage within and outside the team, because I'm starting to wonder a little bit. The promises were one thing, right? I mean, we expected maybe an attacking football, a pressing football, and all of that, but I almost wonder, seeing what I see right now, is Ten Hag capable to say, wait a second, hang on here. The way I have this team with all the injuries and everything, would we not be better to be a very good counter-attacking team unless we get all the pieces together here? Because I think because we're talking about Manchester United historically and what Ten Hag, I think, promised, we're looking at a team that was going to press, was going to possess the ball, like maybe some of the old United teams. Well, none of that is happening. I don't think they're capable of doing that, really, looking at the players that they have. But I think on a counter, good, solid defense, maybe when Luke Shaw returns and Varane gets back healthy, I can see that. So, but the biggest thing is, because quietly, I think we're all wondering, Mark, maybe you can tell us what's happening inside the club, but they better be thinking to say, look, we're at a place where we thought we were not going to return to based on last season. Here we are again. They need to make a decision. Is Ten Hag the man to go forward?
Do you know something? It's a valid point, and I made the point after the City game that that he's been given a lot of cover this year by the Glazers, by the situation at the club, that Ten Hag is a problem the club don't want to deal with because they've got so much going on upstairs in terms of the Glazers are kind of squabbling between themselves as to whether to sell the club or whether to keep the club or have an investment. And they got the people, the senior people at the club are worried about their futures, they're worried about their jobs. They don't want to be thinking about the football. So the fact that they beat Fulham at the weekend, it's for them, it's like, oh, we can take a sigh of relief and let's focus on something else. But you're right. I mean, the results have been way down where United need to be. I mean, they are still in touch in the league, taking on the top 4 race, strangely, but they're not playing well. You look at United every time they play, you have to wonder what they're doing. You look, strange decisions like playing Victor Lindelof at left back in the derby against City when they've got a left back on the bench who's a left back and Lindelof's a right-footed centre half. So there's a lot of confusion there, but I don't think they'll get rid of Ten Hag unless it gets really bad. I think that he is a problem that's way down the list right now because they've got other things to deal with. In terms of bringing people in January, nothing's going to happen there unless he brings some money in. Now, Jadon Sancho is the obvious one that they want out, but I mean, how much are you going to get for Jadon Sancho? They paid £72 million for him. He's not in the team. He's being basically cast into the wilderness. But clubs know that. Buying clubs know that they're not going to suddenly give United £50 million for Jadon Sancho because they know that in football speak, he's damaged goods. The club don't want him. They want rid of him, so it's going to hit his value. So they obviously need, they need reinforcements in every area. They need a second striker, really, or a first striker to play with Højlund. They need a better winger. But unless they bring some money in, they've got no headroom to bring anybody in because FFP is still an issue. They overspent last year. They didn't bring enough money commercially, not enough prize money. So United have got a problem in January because they haven't got the headroom or the bandwidth to bring people in unless they get people out of the door.
And getting rid of Erik ten Hag is going to cost money as well if they wanted to ever do that as well. But hey, let's move on and let's go to the other side of Manchester as Manchester City, and they have made it to the knockout stages of the Champions League after another big victory over Young Boys. Erling Haaland, 39 goals and 34 Champions League matches. They're playing Chelsea this weekend, who played in the most ridiculous game I have ever seen in the history of my life on Monday in the Premier League. We'll talk about that in a second. But our very own Rob Dawson sat down with Manuel Akanji, Man City's defender, about their objectives and about what inspires them to once again, defend all the titles that they have. Check it out.
After a season where you've been so successful and won 3 trophies, what is your motivation heading into a new season to win even more? What drives you?
To repeat it. I mean, if we don't win it, it's going to be a disappointment. So, yeah, I want to win every trophy again that it's possible to do.
Is that the hunger for success here so strong that you just said the word disappointment? If you don't win the treble again, it would be a disappointment. Is that the mentality that is within this squad?
I wouldn't say it's a disappointment when we don't win the treble again because it's really hard to do. But our goal is to win it every year, and obviously we're going to be disappointed when we lose in let's say in the quarterfinals of the Champions League because we want to go to the final and we want to play for these games. But there are sometimes the opponent is better or our performance wasn't good enough. And then we know what we did wrong. But I think everyone in the team wants to go into every game to win it. And that's why we're always disappointed when we lose a game. But I wouldn't say it's like a massive disappointment. But we want to do it again.
A very smart man, Manuel Akanji, an incredible mathematician, by the way. Google that one if you want to. All right, let's talk some Man City, Chelsea. Janusz, is Man City the best team in the Champions League right now?
Absolutely, until proven otherwise, right? I mean, they're just getting going. Just as much as we had some questions about them. You see the performance of Doku, Grealish. I think that's going to be a great challenge for him, which I think he'll answer. I mean, so many options. John Stones is out again, I think, right? I read, so that's unfortunate. But they do have 4 or 5, maybe 6 strong, physical, technical center backs who, by the way, can play just about anywhere in that back line, and a goalkeeper that's one of the best in the world. So I don't even want to go up at positions, and the fact that De Bruyne isn't even there. So I think, look, in terms of Champions League, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich can match them for quality and depth, I think. Teams like Inter and maybe Atleti can frustrate them over the course of 2 legs. It's not impossible, obviously, that those 2 teams could pose problems. But other than that, I think it's City's to lose once again.
Augie, any thoughts on... obviously, like Akanji said in that video, it's obviously very difficult to win the treble again. But when you talk about Manchester City and everything that Janusz just echoed as well, it's not impossible to do it all again, is it?
No, it's not. Listen, a lot of it depends on, luck in the draw. I mean, they've been knocked out of the Carabao Cup because they got Newcastle away. So FA Cup, they could be drawn at Anfield, they could be drawn at Tottenham or Arsenal. So that, that's how the cookie crumbles at times, isn't it? In terms of the Champions League, I do think that over 2 legs to beat anybody, it's just if they get to the final, which they probably will do, then Barca, Real, Bayern Munich, on a one-off occasion, these teams could beat City, but maybe 3 times out of 10. So the odds favour City, and certainly the league they do as well. So I think it's going to be hard, but as we've seen over the years, it is hard to defend the Champions League, never mind defend the treble. I think only Real Madrid have done it recent years, actually defend the Champions League, and that was a special team with a lot of special players, as City are. So I think the likelihood is they'll win it again, certainly the Champions League, but it's hard to say they'll win the treble again. I think the FA Cup might be where they slip up, but it depends on the draw.
Depends on the draw. All right, let's focus on Chelsea, obviously, as they, Janusz, won 4-1 against Tottenham on Monday, which was just a circus of events, I think, really. It was just ridiculous. 2 red cards, 5 disallowed goals, 5 goals, an angry Greek-Australian manager that got happier and angrier and happier, and then the other side, the Argentinian manager getting out. It was insane. Talk to me about Chelsea's victory against Tottenham. What did you make out of it, if you can?
Yeah, I mean, I'll repeat what I said, I think even yesterday. I mean, it's hard to tell in a game like this. I don't know how much I got out of that game. I mean, if I look at Spurs, I mean, certainly 11-11, I think they would have won that game. They were the better side. I want to give Chelsea credit because just before the equalizer, there was good 10, 15 minutes where you could see it coming. They were putting things together. They were applying very good high pressure that Spurs couldn't deal with. And then all these decisions, disallowed goals and VAR and all that, it's difficult to say something other than the fact that it's still a win. It's an important one. It's a win away from home that, if we're going to talk about Manchester United turning the corner, that may be something that obviously pushes them. But knowing who they have to face next and all that, I think, let's just wait maybe for confirmation of that win, see how much they truly have gotten out of that.
Yeah, I mean, 9 men. And also there was a moment in that game where Heung-min Son could have equalized and it didn't happen. But Mark Ogden, Nicholas Jackson, yeah, that's right.
As well.
Damn right. They kept on going. So it could have happened. But hey, they got that win in the end. And Nico Jackson, Mark Ogden, got a hat trick in that game. Has he deserved the criticism he has earned, do you think?
Yeah, I think he has in many ways. I think he's looked very raw. Listen, it's not his fault. I mean, at the end of the day, Chelsea paid the fee and they put him in the team. But I do think he's way off, ready for a better Premier League starting team, I think. And the fact he's got a hat-trick against nine men, it's great for his confidence, but let's not read too much into it. But, all strikers need to score goals. It might kick him on. But I have to agree with Janusz in the sense that I do think Tottenham were the better team. But I think it's the implications long-term of this that, they've lost Nicky van der Ven, and that was such a bad hamstring. It looks like he could be out for a long time. So they got Man City in a couple of weeks. Maddison might be out as well. It's what it does to Tottenham going forward. But the flip side is, Chelsea now got the confidence. They've won a big game against a big London rival. I do think City at home is going to be too much for them, but you never know with Chelsea. Chelsea are a club with a big mentality. They've got a lot of players who need to find their way a little bit. But I do think at times against Spurs, they look like a young team trying to find a way through and looking for guidance from older players, from the coach. And I think as such a young and inexperienced team, I think that makes it very difficult for Chelsea to beat City, because City will just find a way to beat them.
This is obviously, Janusz, the Cole Palmer revenge game. Maybe he's. I'm looking at his stats here in the Premier League. I mean, 3 goals, 2 assists. What have you made of his season so far?
I think it's been great. It was a good move for him, right? I mean, because he's become a little bit of a focal point. The type of player that Chelsea midfield, this sort of the way he plays right now, desperately needed. I mean, they've been strong and physical enough in that midfield, but the creativity was missing. And I think look, I mean, at City wasn't a fair fight the way he was playing, because he was really competing in the wide areas for the most part, or even central. And who are you going to compete? He's just not good enough, not dynamic enough for Manchester City. Because as good as he kind of, to me, he's a little bit of a Martin Odegaard of Arsenal, right? I mean, you see what he does, how good technically he is, his vision. He's not going to be taking you on a 50-yard run and beating 2 or 3 or 4 players. And maybe in the combination play, he was good enough. But for City, just misplayed. It's just unfair to compete with the likes of, Foden, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Doku. So you could understand that. But here at Chelsea, it looks like he's found his home. And he's one of those players that you pick out in the starting 11 immediately, because that Chelsea team has been missing that type of player for a while. So fair play to him. Sometimes a move like I assume it probably wasn't an easy move for him. Here you are at City, you can win all these trophies. You are getting time and looks. I think he was a good enough player to be a squad player, but he chose a different road, and I think he made the right decision.
Yeah, he did. And this is a big game on Sunday. Manchester City currently leading the Premier League table. They could stay there, of course, with a victory. Chelsea in 10th. They want to climb up that table as well. It's all very tight. And we end with predictions very quickly. Let's see, Mark Ogden, what do you expect out of Chelsea against Manchester City?
Yeah, I think Chelsea's confidence will make them have a go, but I just think City are too experienced, too strong, and I think City win this game 3-1.
3-1. Janusz Michalek?
Yeah, 2-0. I mean, you saw Manchester City in Europe rested the key players for the most part in the starting lineup. That's an important game for Pep and City, because they know games like these are always statement games, and they want to make a statement, City, every time they step out.
Indeed. The rich get richer, the strong get stronger. I also agree with the Manchester City win. And there you have it, everybody. Thanks so much for watching ESPN FC Live. Janusz Michalek on one side, Mark Ogden on the other one, Luis Miguel Echegaray. Don't forget, by the way, we got ESPN FC TV. Go on ESPN.com. Lots more content for you, and we will be back very, very soon. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will see you next time. Till then, bye-bye.